Greetings. So welcome back. Welcome back to another episode. This is our 5th episode of Pursuing Ancestral Medicine. We're very happy. Today we have a very special guest with us. She is the first medicine person we're going to have on the show, but she's also a relative for both Vanessa and I. She is of Yoeme Yaqui ancestry, just like ourselves. So granted that, we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves in Yaqui for the first time here on the show. So Liosen Shima Nyabu, Ketchamalea Inepo Cesar. Greetings to everyone. My name is Cesar, like you guys already know. And that's a way to traditionally introduce ourselves in Yoeme. Vanessa?
Liosen Shimania Inepo Vanessa. Greetings everyone. I'm Vanessa, your co-host.
Liosen Chania. I wish I was fluent in Yoeme, but I am not. So I say to you, greetings. My name is Grace Alvarez Sesma. I'm known as Grace, and I'm very happy to be with you all this day.
Wonderful. I'm not fluent either, Grace, so don't worry about it. I'm learning. I'm a student.
I'm here with my teacher.
Yes, yeah, there you go.
We're all learning from each other, and this is going to be a great session for us to specifically learn from you, Mala. So we're very, very excited to have you on. So Mala, Grace, would you tell us a little bit about yourself? You have a very interesting background that I think the audience can truly benefit from. Would you tell us a little bit more about who you are as a person, your profession, and the gift that you possess, which is medicine, which is truly an outstanding gift that our people truly look after?
Thank you. Pues primeramente Dios, I'm a grandmother. I've got 5 grandsons. I've got 3 daughters. I'm a wife. I'm a sister. I'm a niece. But most of all, I am someone who lives her life, I hope, in service to my family, to my community, and to all those areas that I am called to go to share the little bit that I have learned in my 64 years. For the past 20 years, I have been more open about our medicine ways. To me, it's not that I chose it, it's that it chose me.
That's awesome.
So I've learned the hard way to listen to the ancestors, in following the call to return to the medicine. Because when I've had dreams since I think maybe 6 or 7, in different shapes or forms, ¿verdad? And like I said, the medicine chose me. I didn't choose the medicine, and in fact, I was very reluctant to take up the medicine ways, because I had seen my tias in Mexicali. One of my tias in particular, she was the neighborhood curandera. And, like a lot of us I was born in Mexicali, we visit almost like hidden. We visit our curanderas and curanderos for help. And I always noticed that most of them were really quite poor. And my family, we grew up as a very humble family. También in Mexicali, we lived in the Colonia Progar, which I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's one of the top 5 poorest colonias in Mexicali. A little dirt floor, a casita that my dad and my mom were building by hand with help from the family, the adobe bricks. Now that we were in the United States and the medicine was calling, I was concerned because I know that it requires a lot of dedication. It's a path of service, and it's not a business. Like some people seem to think over here in the United States that, every healing modality is supposed to be like a business. And for me, the way I observed in my family and in my community is that this path is a path of dedication, of love to community, love of family, love of culture, and love of service. For me, I was very hesitant to start learning. And I say start because, I grew up with some of the practices that you're probably both familiar, when caída de mollera, I saw my tías, hear the neighborhood kids of caída de mollera, where where you das un poquito de masaje to the baby, you suck on the top of their fontanelle, and then you turn them upside down, you pat the bottoms of their feet. And the way I remember my tia would do it is after they did all of that, they would get some red string and they would put it on the top of their forehead. I saw all that, but I didn't receive like official training, like when you apprentice with a curandera or curandero. My reluctance also came because I got married at age 16 and divorced by the time I was 19 with 2 daughters. I dropped out of high school when I got married. My job, as I saw it, was to raise my children and to work hard to be able to provide for my family. And I worked 2 jobs for a long time until I finally, was hired by a company to help them run a psychiatric partial hospitalization program. I was doing quite well. By that time, my children were in high school. I was making, pretty decent money. I was able to buy a house. I had a car, nice car. And the grandmothers came to visit me in the dreams again. And they said, we've been telling you that you need to return to the medicine ways and you're not listening. And if you don't return to the medicine ways, you're going to lose everything. And I was still, in my way, I was still negotiating with the abuelas, saying like, no, wait, I still have to raise my kids. I haven't completed this. I don't have enough time to do all that. And after the final warning, after many years of dreams and receiving teachings from the abuelas in spirit, one day the company called me about a month after the last dream, of the warning dream, and said they were closing all their programs, including my program in Imperial Valley. And so basically within a couple of months, I was unemployed. In a month after that, I basically, had no money. My house was repossessed. My car was repossessed. I had to start all over. It was a really very, very difficult time for me and my children. And so finally, it's like, I went into prayer and I said, okay, abuelas, it's fine. Okay, I give up. I will return to the medicine. And within a couple of months, I had a job again, a well-paid job again. Within that time period, some of my friends who lived in El Centro called me and they said, "Hey, Grace, we're going to Tecate. We're going to take the community over there, blankets and food and other things," because it was the fall. And he said, my friend said, "Well, do you want to come with us? Because we just found out that one of the elders that we'll be visiting is Yaqui, and we know that your background is Yaqui, so we thought you would want to go with us." And I said, "Okay, sure." So I got some things together, and me quitaba la pena. So I just went along. It was going to be fun. And I get there, and there's this very tough-looking hombre de conocimiento. And he is very gentle with us in many ways. And he's sitting and we were chit-chatting, and he says, "Do you guys know any songs?" And we say, "We really don't know any songs." And we continue talking. And then all of a sudden he looks at me with these eyes gazed like, that they just piercing. It scared me. And he said, "Tú eres mi aprendiz." And I said, no, yo no soy su aprendiz. You no vine. I was terrified. It's one of the few times that I can tell that I was truly, truly terrified. And I said, "You know what? I'm leaving. Let's go." And we got up and left. And about a week later, about 4:00 in the morning, I heard his voice. And he said, "Levántate. Y es tiempo de despertar. Wake up. It's time to awaken." And he's a pretty controversial person. I have a great deal of respect for him. He put me through really rigorous times, very difficult challenges with him. But he was able to elicit from me some of the medicine that I have had carrying around that I really wasn't ready to bring out. And so I probably was off and on with him for about 10, 15 years. I still consider him a teacher. an elder. Some things I don't agree with, as you know, it's a human relationships, ¿verdad? But because of him, I started feeling more comfortable about sharing medicine. I helped him work with people without, sobadas, baños were a big thing. And the way he heals is through dream work. Through my life, dreams are what have guided me. The dreams are the ones in where the antepasados have come to me and given me a lot of teachings. So I appreciate that, and I respect him in that way as an elder who really, really brought me along. And after I started that, I mean, it took me a long time before I felt comfortable saying like, oh yeah, I can do a limpia. I really was still wanted to keep it kind of quiet, but life has a way of forcing one to step out and step up. And so eventually that happened, that Arizona Western College asked me to offer a class honoring the traditional medicine ways, learning how to honor traditional medicine ways, which I started teaching after I went to the Quetzal elders in Yuma because it's in their land. And I asked Elder Preston Arrowweed for his blessings. He said, you need to go talk to the women elders. They're going to be at the senior center. So the following Friday, I took a bunch of groceries and helped set up the tables and, feed and honor the elders, and sat with the señoras and, told me a little bit. They grilled me, and after that, they all gave me their blessings to be able to teach there at the college. And so from there, things have just sort of moved along. Y pues aquí estoy, serving the communities that asked me to go to where they are and do the best I can to help in whatever ways I can, whether through consejos or sobadas, primarily limpias is what people come to me for. Mm-hmm. I was born in Mexicali, Baja California, which is part of Kumeyaay land. And I come to you from the unceded lands of the Kumeyaay Nation that is now known here as San Diego, California. On my father's side, I am Mestiza Yaqui from San Miguel de Orcasito, Sonora. And as I understand it, my tata and my nana came from San Miguel de Orcasitos in the, I would say, late 1800s. Probably they left there to come to Mexicali, Baja California. On my mother's side, was from Ensenada, Baja California. And she moved to Mexicali when she was still about 2 or 3 years old. Her older aunt gathered her and her siblings from Ensenada because they were or she in particular, my Hawaii later called Nana. She was kidnapped at one point by Yori, a white man from San Diego, was able to escape. And because my mom's mom had died when my mother was about a year old, so she was, she took charge of the family, and she kindly got all her kids, my mom, her siblings, and went to Mexicali to be able to live more comfortably and away from the danger that this person was causing her and the family. That's where my mom met my dad. I grew up in La Colonia, Colonia Progar in Mexicali. And I was really blessed that all my tias and tios, we all were just, a few blocks from each other. And that's something that today I think is missing from a lot of our communities, that our families live so far away from each other. But in those days, I could leave my house and be in my tia's house for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. It was just really, really a wonderful childhood. Even though where we were very humble, we were, quite poor. I never felt poor. I felt very comfortable and rich in family, which I think is a real true blessing for me. That's where I grew up, observing my tias on my father's side, because there we're mostly with my father's family, the Mestizo Yoeme side. And they brought a lot of what I see now, I think, is our culture, our Yaqui culture. And they, I grew up with those big old tortillas made on the oil drums, and my tios making hole in the backyard and cooking, that way. Unfortunately, I was never lucky enough to go with them to Magdalena, because every year my tias would go to Magdalena at least once a year, either for, the April Lenten season or in October for Dia de los Antepasados, de los Muertos. My sister did. But one of these days, I hope to go to Magdalena, I hope to go San Miguel de Orcasitos and go to some of those areas where, my ancestors lived and were born and got married. So watching my tias is where I first was. No, they say that's where you learn, but nobody says this is how you do it. You watch. It's part of everyday life. So, yeah, that's how I learned. They did the egg limpias. They did the adjustments of la caída de mollera. My mom did the same for us. Los tecitos. Just nobody called themselves curanderas because it was just normal everyday life for us. That's just what we did, especially in those days. One of my tias, though, she was the one that, in paz descanse, she was the one that treated neighbors and friends, not just family members. And she was the one that we all acknowledged as being a curandera. Unfortunately, my father and my family discouraged me from learning from her. They were concerned for me. And I think even today, there's a lot of people that worry that their kids are being taught other things. I think perhaps it's a certain form of colonialism, colonial thinking, that our traditional cultural ways are bad or evil. I still have family members who believe that way and don't like that I practice our medicine ways. So in that sense, it's very sad because I was called to this ways through medicine dreams from a very early age. And sometimes I look back, I think about it, I say like, oh, what would have happened if we had still been living in our Yoeme community? Would a traditional healer been able to, take me under their wing? Because really, there's the chiquitos, we're supposed to learn these things. If somebody recognizes you or they see that you're having dreams, they immediately start, making you help them. And so sometimes I wonder that, but life is what it is. And, this is the way I have learned it. So these days, after working for many years in the general community as a public relations director for San Diego County Water Authority, for a psychiatric partial hospitalization program, Arizona Western College asked me to teach some classes there. After a few years, people started asking me if I would help them, and they would come to my house in El Centro, and I still kept it very quiet. People they knew me as the founder of Mana of Imperial Valley. They knew me as someone who, if that I was very outspoken. I ran for city council. I served on the planning commission. They knew me as that public persona, but very few people knew that very quietly I was relearning my medicine ways and serving people on the weekends for who those wanted to come and see me. And so little by little, more and more people, and I started getting more comfortable about speaking about curanderismo. And really part of my growth, I think, is finding out that people see curanderismo as a system of healing, which it sort of is. But to me, it's always just been something that we do in our homes and something that we feel is a gift from Creator. And the ancestors, for me, the ancestors have been the driving teachers in my life, and they still are today. And dreams still continue to inform my work, to inform the decisions that I make on a almost daily basis. Dreams are how I first was told that I'd be meeting my husband. I met him 10 years after that. And when I was working at Arizona Western College, these elders would come to me in dreams, this couple. And they had told me that there's somebody that was going to, because I was divorced for 32 years when I met him. So they started telling me that, like, prepare yourself, right? And about 6 months before I met him, the elders popped up again in my dreams and they said, hey, that man we told you about 10 years, you're going to be meeting him soon. And luckily I remembered to ask him what to look for. And they said, he's going to tell you this, he's going to be wearing this. And they were very specific, 3 things. And so when I met him, he was a guest lecturer for my class, the day that I picked him up from the airport, he said, I don't know why I'm supposed to tell you this or show you this, but he said, I never wear this and I'm going to show you. And he took out from his little satchel a beautiful medallion, a Navajo medallion, which is what I was shown in the dream. And so mentally I said, like, okay, that's one. And then during the process of that 2 days, he fulfilled all of those things that the elders told me he had to do and say. So I shared that as another example of how dreams have been very important to me, not only in returning to the medicine, but in the way that the ancestors wanted me to have a medicine partner also to support my work. And we've been together 14 years now. And since he and I got married, then I've been able to devote myself more to continuing to learn our medicine ways, to be able to serve our communities in Colorado, here in California. We go to Ottawa in Canada every year, where the Iskatu Lodge and the Kumik Lodge, First Nations teaching and healing lodges invite us for about a month every year. And so, well, here I am aquí en San Diego, en su casa, para servirles si algo se les ofrece.
Muchas gracias, Marla.
Gracias.
There's so much to talk about today that I'm pretty excited. So I also have family who lives in Mexicali, Pueblo Nuevo.
Oh, how yeah.
Yeah, so it's close by, even though Mexicali has grown significantly. I think it's a humongous city now.
I don't know if I can drive around there anymore.
Right?
Yeah.
Traffic's starting to get heavy.
Yeah.
But no, thank you so much for sharing a bit of who you are, Mala, and we're pretty excited to have you, and I'm sure the audience has been really asking us in questions. They're always asking questions about what about these plants for medicine, or dreams and all these things, and that brings us to the fact that all these combination of things, our traditional medicine, our traditional ways of knowledge, and dreams all combine are part of the essential nucleus of what makes us indigenous to these lands, what makes us people. And it kind of brings me to the next question, Mala. You have a Facebook page. It's called, if I'm not getting it wrong, Curanderismo, el arte de México.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
The Healing Art of Mexico. Yeah.
Healing Art of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, Mala, in the previous discussion, you mentioned the importance of dreams in pursuing the work that we do. How do you think it has led you? You mentioned that at first you said, I'm not sure if I'm ready, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something we're always questioning ourselves, right? Whether we have a dream, whether it comes to us not in a dream, in whether we see a sign, whether we see anything that rings our attention. But sometimes we doubt ourselves. We say, maybe it's not the right path for me to follow. Maybe I'm not ready. What do you recommend when we come across these situations? What should we do? And how can we confront what we're truly born to be? Because sometimes we doubt really kicks in.
That's a great question. And it's a difficult one because every single person dreams differently. Part of the dreaming is also, I think, like a muscle, is having being scared, but moving through the fear and testing out if the information in the dream that you have is true. For me, the dreams have always, at least what I call medicine dreams, different from the everyday kind of dreams that tell you that you're worried, or the nightmares and that kind of thing. But the medicine dreams to me feel different. They look different. Usually the out, like if I'm here, the around me, it's a little darker. Like I can't see beyond that. I can't see a horizon. They're usually elders who talk to me. Sometimes there's been animals that come to me. There's been quite a few animals that have come to me in dreams, and one in particular made the transition from the dream into my everyday life, or even my sister and some other people were able to see this animal, and he was kind of fearsome, So you can't ignore those things. I have learned in the dream to ask the questions. Like, what is it exactly? How will I know if what you're telling me is true? And like I said, that example I gave of my husband and I meeting, they gave me really clear-cut directions. And also for me, when I haven't followed the dream guidance, usually something bad happens. So it's like a muscle that you have to cultivate. You have to cultivate your ability to remember the dream, to write it down if you need to. The reason why I like writing it down is because you can also see, 6 months or a year down the road, you look back at that dream and you can identify what parts of it made it into your waking life, and you're able to discern the pattern. As an example, for a while back when I was beginning to have a conventional good paying job, right? I started having dreams of having a child, a baby boy or a baby girl. And so over a period of years, I discerned that holding a baby girl meant a new awakening for my spiritual life. Like it was my medicine. Those were medicine things. If it was a boy, it was masculine. So that was like the external energy. That was the work. That was the non-medicine life. And I learned that those were new beginnings, something that was coming in, and I needed to prepare myself. And I did. It's having, the courage to set aside the colonial thinking that dreams are always just ways of processing information from the day, and learning, because I do have those processing dreams, and I have trashy dreams, that you can tell I'm just, something was worrying me and it processed out. But those medicine dreams are very distinct for me. I don't know if this is really answering your question. Part of it is just, trusting in your ancestors, especially if your ancestors appearing to you in dreams, and who the ancestor is. For example, when the grandmothers were warning me that if I didn't follow my medicine calling, that something bad was happening. One of the things that I did, trying to be like clever with the grandmothers, they said, "Oh, well, you want me to learn healing? Okay, well, I'm going to learn Reiki." And I learned Reiki, and I love it. I still really like it. But one of my tios, who I loved, he was a chief of the fire department in Ensenada for like 30, 40 years. And I really looked up to him and his ability to be a leader and to lead his men. And there's a certain way he spoke, very authoritatively, but gently. And I just adored him. So he came into my dream one night. He said, "Griselda Alvarez Sesma," because he used to tell me, when you want to get somebody's attention, you call all of their names, ¿verdad? "Griselda Alvarez Sesma, tú sabes que este no es tu camino. Este no es tu camino." It's like, and I woke up like, oh man, I really did it this time. And so, that was the other little hurting. And I paid attention. I mean, I believe that was true. So it's learning to, I think, when you pray, before you go to sleep, is your prayer that your dreams be clear, that they will be given to you in a way that you will remember, that you will understand, and that you will be able to take action upon in the waking time. I think that's also important, the preparation. I never prepared myself, but I've learned now through all these many years of experience that helps to pray before you go to sleep. Clear your mind, clear your heart of worries as much as you can, and then ask for that guidance.
I think, like you said, we all have dreams, and we all, especially if we have a connection, and I like to tell that to people. One of the things I tell people is that coming from Mexican culture, or coming from the Southwest, and being raised in these areas, we all have ancestral ties to indigenous people, and all these things down the line in our blood memory have an association, very important association, with our ancestral ties, with our ancient beliefs, and that meets in the middle, and that path is there for us to follow. But like I said, sometimes we don't really know how to read the signs, or perhaps like you mentioned, sometimes it takes us time for us to recognize, okay, this is what I should truly be doing. But,
Yeah.
and I'm glad you share that, I'm glad you share that with us. That for you, it wasn't a straight linear path that took you to where you are today. It was a learning path.
That's right.
And
And it still is, that's why, to me, for many reasons, our sacred relative, the serpent, the snake it teaches us about that fluidity, right? And that our path is never like this. It's like this and it's like this. And somehow all the experiences that we have, at some point we can see that they converge, and they've given us the tools, the understanding, the experience, the skills to do what we're doing now. And one of the ways that I think also that externally we get validation sometimes from other relatives in unexpected ways. For me, as a woman, as a mestiza who was raised, my father said, somos mexicanos, pero somos yaquis, somos indios también. And at that time, I didn't understand why he was expressing it in quite that way. But now I understand what he meant. En que paz descanse también mi gordo. But I understand what he means now, because we were not a part of a traditional community. When we moved to Mexicali, we stopped that. And though we maintained certain practices, we still weren't part of that. So to me, there's always been that respect. We have to have respect for our relatives who stayed in the traditional communities, who continued unbroken as much as we can, ¿verdad? Unbroken the cultural practices. And also because, like here, a lot of people say like, well, you're this and you're that, and where's your papers? And all, there's all these things that arise. We're often taught not to claim our heritage, one, out of respect, and also because some people feel that you have to have paper documentation. And so for many of us, we don't have the paper documentation, so that's also problematic. But it's interesting to me that there's little things that have come up throughout my life that bring me back. And one of this I wanted to share, if I may now, the story of this necklace. My husband is, not only is a traditional healer himself from the First Nations Cree ways, but he's also a very highly respected Qigong master and Tai Chi teacher. And we were visiting about 10, 11 years ago. We're visiting another very well-respected Chinese grandmaster and his wife. His wife was American. And we were sitting in their living room, I think it was somewhere in Colorado. And we were just getting to know each other. And I was talking, with his wife, and my husband's friend said, "Oh, Grace, I understand that you're a healer." And he says, "Where are you from?" So I told him a little bit about myself, and that my family was originally from Sonora, and that I was mestiza Yaqui from that area. And in that moment, his wife just suddenly got up from the living room, and she went to another part of the house. And she came back, and she was almost like crying. And she said, "Grace, I have a really special gift for you. It's from a Yaqui medicine man that I met in Sonora about, I think she said 5 or 6 years prior to our meeting." And she was in Sonora, and she was at a park. If I remember correctly, she was sitting at a park, and this gentleman, elderly man, sat next to her, and they were talking. And he took out this necklace, and he told her that he had made it, and he was giving it to her for safekeeping, because it was supposed to be for someone she would meet at some point in her life, and that she would know who to give it to. So she said she knew that this necklace made by this, who she called a Yaqui medicine man, that he gave it to her for safekeeping until she met me so that she could give it to me. So to me, this is really special. I wear it on very special occasions, and especially when I'm doing limpias, because, it's the transformation, it's the letting go of outdated things. And people usually think they're little stars, that they're like carved stars, but it's the vertebrae of the snake.
Oh, wow.
Oh, the vertebrae. Okay.
Yeah. So they look little stars from far away, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you see them really close, you see it's the vertebrae.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece.
¿Verdad? Yeah, it's very special to me, especially because of the story behind it.
Yeah.
So, I really wanted to share that with you, Cesar and Vanessa, because I knew that you would appreciate that story.
Yeah, it's
one of the sacred stories of my life, gracias a Dios. And I think it's the kind of synchronicities that happen when we really start working our path with that, like that when we finally surrender. We surrender to the calling. And the abuelas always said, no te preocupes. You'll never be rich, but will always be taken care of.
Mm.
So I finally learned to trust in that.
Thank you for sharing that, Mala. So I do have an interesting observation. So historically in our people, the best medicine people, or the gift of medicine lies in the woman, and that's something that has historically been passed down as part of our traditional knowledge systems, our stories. This traditional medicine, this traditional healing, is that a gift that has traditionally ran in your family? You mentioned a little bit about this coming to you in dreams, but I'm wondering, if this is something that was practiced, previously in previous generations in your family.
Yeah, on my father's side of the family, the Yaqui side of the family, yes, definitely. My tias all had some understanding, and one of my tias in particular, and she was one that was a little ostracized because she carried this medicine. And again, my mom, for example, she wasn't Yaqui. We grew up believing that we were also Kumeyaay, but I cannot find any kind of historical information that we are, so I'm not quite sure. But she also had some healing ability. And I think she also learned a lot of things from my tias in terms of the teas, just the general kinds of things, and doing the general gentle egg limpias on family members. So I do believe, and plus, like, in all my family, we laugh even now, all of us. We cannot keep secrets from each other. The kids, they get upset because we always know. We always know when they're doing something. We always know what's going on with each other at some level. And I think that that's part of the medicine that also runs through our family lineages. And for us también, I think what's encouraging is that we always discuss dreams growing up. It was just like, "Ay, pues, ¿de qué soñaste esa noche?" And, "Oh, okay, that's good, mija." But it was not considered like glamorous. Like in these circles nowadays, you just like, "Oh, yes, big dreams," It was just like, this is okay, y ahora ponte a lavar los trastes, ve a limpiar el baño. They keep you grounded.
It's more casual, right?
Yes, it's just like, it's everyday thing. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I do think that in my family, that I think we do have a lineage. And, so far, the only information that I've seen from my father's side of the family has been just historically that we're from San Miguel de Orcasitos, from Cucurpe, I've seen some, Rayon and Cocorit, I think is the other one. But no, for some reason in my family, there doesn't seem to have been a historical teacher, a tia rather. I'm the tia that's trying to collect everything, and all my nieces and nephews, they know to come to me. That I'm trying to reconstruct some family history so that those who come after me will have something, that they're not going to have to start from scratch. And I'm hopeful that some of my nieces and my grandchildren will be called to take up the medicine if the ancestors call on them.
Just hearing your words, I gotta say your words are medicine as well in my mind. Um, you discussing these things, even growing up, discussing dreams with your family, it reminds me so much of my mom. Because it's interesting. My background is more. I was raised. My parents were converted as children to apostolic, so it's very conservative Christian, very conservative. And the one thing that my mom would always remind us though is that we were Yaqui, and then also she would use plant medicines such as something called manso, which I found out years later was common mallow for my asthma. Eucalyptus leaves, she would boil them and have us go over with the blanket and, inhale when we'd have respiratory issues. And another thing that was casual was dreams. She would tell me about how, yeah, my tia, she had this one dream of visiting this place with these little houses. And then she ended up visiting 10 years later. She was there and she told everybody, oh yeah, my dream came true. It was this nonchalant, very casual thing. So the only person I really discuss dreams with is my mom, because, that's who I feel most comfortable with, because I know she'll take me seriously. So it's interesting that we're talking about dreams. Even before this conversation, I gotta say, we were talking about dreams, Cesar and I. And I think there's just this, for today, there's this focus on the dream world, Tenkuania, right? And I've been getting questions too. For example, I'm part of the Yoema Two-Spirit community, and there are some members that are asking, when it comes to dreams, we're supposed to be called in our dreams, like what's the protocol for those dreams, or how do we prepare for those dreams, or how do we know for those dreams? So I feel like there's a lot of questions around, especially for the youth, younger people, how do we go about sustaining ourselves, our spiritual selves, when it comes to our dreams, and making sure that we're doing it in a respectful manner, in a manner that is in a good path, not something to be what is it called, commodified, or
Right.
there's always this concern, and then I think it's a valid concern of not wanting to objectify something that is supposed to be so personal and spiritual.
I agree. I think also in terms of like honoring the dreams, if you receive specific instructions or some knowledge that is sacred knowledge, you go outside after you wake up, and thank the ancestors, thank Creator, thank the good doctor spirits, give them an offering, whether it's tobacco. I like to, I call it my emergency medicine. I carry American Spirit cigarettes in a little box. So wherever I am, I know I can light up that cigarette and send up some prayers, and instead of like a pipe, because I also have a little small pipe that I like to use. But you can not smoke for like recreation, but that you have that medicine that you can sprinkle some tobacco on a little matita and thank the ancestors for that dream guidance, and ask them to continue to guide you in your waking state, so that you can bring it to fruition in a good way, in a way that blesses you, in a way that blesses the family, in a way that it blesses everyone that you come in contact with. To me, that's really an important piece of after the dream.
Yeah.
That you acknowledge, and if you get specific knowledge, do your best to not act it out, but carry it forth in the waking time. This is sort of similar, but not, but I'll just offer this in a good way, in the hopes that this will be another example that you and our other relatives can bring into their heart. I was about, almost 9 years ago, I was working with a couple, and we just couldn't get past a block that was happening with them. And I was, worried, because I was surprised that we weren't making more progress. And I did my usual nightly prayers. I mean, I pray in the morning, I pray at nighttime, I pray throughout the day because it's my work. But that night I had a dream, and this fox came to me in the dream, and this fox guardian spirit, this fox, was very stern. And he said the only reason that they're not doing any better is because the husband was not acknowledging that he had used the pelt of a fox in a very inappropriate, manipulative way. And so he had really disturbed that spirit. And this person was someone who was a healer, not a curandero, but a healer, and was learning some native ways. He said, so he took one of my pelts and used it in this way. He says he needs to make amends. And so I asked in the dream, and don't say what can we do? And so he says, he needs to ask for forgiveness, and he needs to make some offerings. And I said, okay. And I was given very other information that I couldn't have known. And in the morning, I called him and I said, I had this dream, and this is what was shown to me. This is what I was told. Is this what happened? And he was stunned. He was stunned that this information that no one knew. And I said, okay, so if you're sincere, you come over to the house today, and we're going to take a walk, and we're going to do a ceremony for forgiveness, and you're going to make amends. And, we did that. And then that really moved everything forward. I share that because I think that there's a lot of young people who are having dreams, but like you said, they don't know what to do with them. Or people say like, oh, it's an archetype that came to speak to you. It's an archetype. And I'm like, no, it's not an archetype. It's fox, or it's it's the bear, or it's the ant
Mm-hmm.
that's coming to talk to you. So I took action on the dream.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm told like you need to go to such and such a place and you need to pray because you made a mistake when you were working on that person, I go. And so I've learned over the years too that when I'm praying for someone or I'm working with someone, that part of my prayer is that, I ask that the Creator and the good doctor spirits forgive me for any mistakes that I am making, and that, that they make it right for all those things, because that's also, I think, part of our medicine is the humility to understand that we don't know much. We still don't know very much. I know I don't. I see some, like, who is it, Doña Maria Matus? I mean, she was an amazing curandera. And I said, oh, why couldn't I have learned with her? I wish I had known of her. I would have gone to ask her if she would accept me as a student. That would have been wonderful, because I work a lot with people, and I work with some plants, but I'm not an herbalist. Soy yerbera. Like a lot of people assume I'm a yerbera, but I'm not. I'm more of a rezadora. That I use the eggs, I use certain plants para barrer, para limpiarlos, and I am blessed that there's certain ancestor spirits that work with me to help me, people with deep-seated trauma, that they've lost an aspect of themselves, to bring them from that place of trauma and bring them back into themselves. But it's definitely not me. It's those ancestor spirits that are willing to make me part of their healing team.
One thing I gotta ask, you had mentioned that you worked in a psychiatric ward, correct? Or
No, psychiatric partial hospitalization.
A PHP. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I live with a mental illness. I have bipolar 1 with psychotic
Mm-hmm.
features and PTSD. And I remember when I first got diagnosed, I felt very, very confused, and like as if that's not something that's supposed to happen to my family. I had many misconceptions around mental illness and disability, like, oh, that's not something that happens to us, that's not something that's supposed to happen to us. And it took me a long time, it took me like a year to accept that I lived with this condition, and that it was a part of my lived experience, because it was an experience. Definitely, it was like living in a waking dream. A lot of things that came up during my episode, my manic and psychotic episode, they years later would appear. And so it was very weird, because I'm used to dreams, like things happening from dreams, but to be in a waking dream like that, and to have those things happen years later, made me very unsure, and also very, like for me, I kind of, when it comes to those things, I kind of step back and I think, okay, that happened, and I'm gonna kind of look the other way. That's because it's uncomfortable to see it happen in reality, something that was in a waking dream or in a real dream. So I'm wondering, for you, I guess my question is, for those of us that do live with mental illness, depression, anxiety, I do appreciate my medication. I do pray over my medication when I take it, and I thank Creator that's available to me because it does help me regulate. So for those of us that do rely on these, like what people consider more Western medicine, to help regulate and function throughout the day, what would you say to us when it comes to living with our mental illness, so that we know that, it's not something to be ashamed of, that it's something that, we can learn a lot from, and that it's okay to accept it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's for anyone with any illness, it's really hard to accept when you have something that's chronic.
Yeah.
For sure. Mental illness in particular, because there's such stigma around it. People don't understand it. And, oftentimes people will say, pues que tienen nervios. Nervios is the catch-all phrase for us, ¿verdad? Culturally. But to me, primeramente, we have to have compassion for ourselves, not to be judging ourselves. I truly believe that our medicine ways together with Western medicine is very positive and good.
Yeah.
It really is. I don't believe in, and I know people who are healers who they say like, no, don't take any medicine, don't take this, don't do that. And I disagree. Allá ellos. But I strongly believe that if you are doing well with your medicine, you take your medicine, you pray, like you were saying, you pray over medicine, you still use your cultural ways so that they work together. And for those like you, that you're a dreamer, that's why I say use your journal. Have a journal where you write everything down, because in particular, if you're going through like a manic phase, you might be putting too much emphasis perhaps on a dream. But if you have it written down, you can look back and see where you didn't make that up.
Yeah.
And if you keep like a journal about what happens today compared to what you did, and then you say like, oh yeah, that happened and it extended into my this state in here, in this orientation, then I think that makes sense. And I want to clarify that even though I was the administrator of a psychiatric partial hospitalization program, I am not a physician. I am not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I was just very blessed to be given the opportunity to be in that position, because I only have a GED. And so for me to run a multi-million-dollar psychiatric program is huge, but it's something that wouldn't happen today. That was back in the 90s. But going back again to your question, I think that it's important that you keep track of your experiences, the dream, the asleep dream, and the waking time, so that you always have a baseline, and that you don't doubt yourself, but rather use that to empower yourself and to see that the diagnosis that you have been given doesn't have to dictate everything that you do in a bad way. So the medicine helps you have good dreams. It helps you to remain stable in your stable emotional state. Your equilibrium is better, right?
Yeah.
So that means that your dreams, your interpretation of the dreams, how you act on those dreams will come from a place of equanimity, of equilibrium, versus, that manic phase where you can't quite tell, and then you're so depressed that you can't tell either. Yeah, you do that. And a little bit in relevance to that, I think, is that when I was growing up, I'm a very strong empath. So I would appear very moody to my family. I would be happy and I would walk into a tia's house and I would start getting really angry, not realizing that what I was picking up was the remnants of anger and energy in a fight that somebody had in her house. And there's some young people that have that ability, that are very sensitive, are very empathic and very in tune, and they are mislabeled or misdiagnosed as being possibly schizophrenic or bipolar, when all it is that they have not been taught that they are sensitive antennas that pick up the emotions of others and make it their own. So what I tell the people who have that, is that first thing in the morning, you wake up and you assess yourself. You do a self-assessment. How am I feeling? How does my body feel? How does my heart feel? How does my mind feel? Is it thinking clearly? Am I feeling good? Am I feeling centered? Oh yeah, I feel great. But then if you go out and you go to the store and you start feeling angry, or that you just walk out on the sidewalk and you start feeling angry after you talk to somebody, that you look back in that moment, remember to look in, okay, what happened? Because I was fine a minute ago. Is this emotion me? Or is this something that that person was carrying around? And the moment that I am able to observe that, that emotion that is not me goes away. And so I've learned now that I don't necessarily do that anymore. I have learned to maintain a certain level of energetic boundaries, so that the only time I really do that is when I am working with someone. So you sitting across from me and we're working together, and I start experiencing certain pains or feelings or emotions, I objectively look at myself and those emotions and understand that that's what they're feeling, that's what maybe they're hiding. And that then I'm able to say to them, this is what you're feeling. This is what you've been carrying around with yourself. And I'm able to do that. So I become the diagnostic tool in that moment. But then when I'm done, I cleanse myself and I say my prayers and it's gone, because it's not me. Mm-hmm. So there's some misunderstanding at times, the differences between someone who's very, very sensitive and empathic in that sense, not just sympathy, but empathic, that they use that their body feels other people's emotions and pain, mm-hmm. and somebody who's mentally ill.
Yeah.
Possibly.
I agree. I totally agree. Mm-hmm. There's a lot that we still don't understand, or at least Western medicine is still catching up to. Because right. I know for me, there's, we have emotion, we have our body, we have our mind, we have our spirit, and all those four, like how we were talking about the equilibrium, I always kind of think of that equalizer, like is it balancing mm-hmm. out, or is there one that's mm-hmm. kind of carrying all three of them, or or is there one that's low? And so for me, I did have to kind of break away from the conservative Christian values that I was raised with, and I was desperate after I got diagnosed. I was, for a year, just couldn't even leave the house. Was so uncertain about everything, what had happened to me. And so I did reach out to a curandera and had my first limpia, the only limpia I've ever had done to me. I've been to other folks' limpias where I've helped because I sing and I drum. And so I remember after that limpia, it was with a woman named Edna Zavala from Peru. It did something, and I felt like that's what I was missing. So there's this whole balance that we're discussing, right? And I felt like I was missing that spiritual component. When it came to my spirit, I wasn't giving my spirit what it needed to mm-hmm. uplift itself and to carry everything, because I don't want it carrying everything. I want my emotion to carry itself. I want my body to carry itself. I want my mind to carry itself. But at the time, it was my spirit that was carrying everything. And so getting that limpia, it really restored a lot of what I needed in that moment. She had said I had susto, like soul fright. Mm-hmm. So she had done the egg limpia. And I told Sai about it. I was telling Cesar about it. Like it, I was desperate, and it worked. It worked for me. It helped. And so I do utilize, there's a saying of everything given to me, I gather what is good for me and I leave what is not. And so mm-hmm. from that, I know that when it comes to Curanderismo, that there is something special there that we're missing when it comes to this Western point of view of spirituality, and making sure our spirit is also nurtured and well. Mm-hmm. That wellness is a whole thing, not just this one specific thing.
Exactly. And what's really great is that, for the last year, I've been working with a group of Chicana therapists, Western trained therapists, mm-hmm. who understand that need. And so, I've been sharing with them slowly, because I still want to be very discerning as to what I share. I've been, sharing with them some aspects of curanderismo that they can incorporate into their practice, in accordance with whatever their legal requirements are for their practice. But we've been doing that pretty, about, I did it for 6 months. Every month I was meeting with a group of Chicanas, about 25 or 30 of them, that had really good questions and really want to serve the community.
Yeah.
They don't want to serve only the dominant culture, but they want to be able to have the tools, the spiritual tools, and the Western tools together so that they can help our Mexican Chicano indigenous communities. And I really like that, because I think that is what is missing from the Western modalities. I just don't want it commodified.
Yeah.
That's where sometimes I kind of veer back and forth, because I don't want it commodified.
Yeah.
Or licensed, because there's also efforts right now to license energy healing, and they consider shamanic healing to be a practice, energy healing practice, which is dangerous, because those shamanic practitioners get their practices from indigenous communities that they don't acknowledge, which is why I don't like the brand of shamanism in the United States, because I feel that they take cultural practices that doesn't belong to them. They are not accountable to the community. They don't acknowledge, I got this from this elder, I got this from this nation. And to me, that's very problematic. And my concern is that there are people in our communities who are desperate to be seen as reputable and as credible as Western trained therapists, as credible as allopathic doctors. And in that desire for our medicine ways to appear credible to the Western eyes, that they're willing to give up our sovereignty. They've taken enough from us. I want the sovereignty of my medicine. I don't want all of a sudden a panel of white males to say, well, Vanessa can be a curandera, but not you, Cesar, and Grace, I don't know about you. And you need to do this, this, and this, and that in order for you to meet our standards so that you can practice. And that now that you're credentialed, that you cannot provide services on a donation, so, you need to charge. I don't think that that's right. And unfortunately, that's something that has been in the works for a number of years. And I'm not seeing enough real genuine interests from other traditional healers to do something about it. So I'll be talking about that probably in my blog or something soon, because that worries me. I don't want our traditional healers to have to jump through hoops just to be able to provide services to the community. Our medicine has been here for thousands of years. Our community is the one that decides whether that person is a curandera or not a curandera. Our community decides that. Whether if the community finds out that you're someone who just wants to be charging a lot of money, the word gets out and people stop going to that person.
Yep.
So that's our legal, or como se dice, that's our panel. People always say, like, well, maestra, how is it then that we can, if you don't give certificates, then how can we, share that with our community? I said, the community gives you the certificate. Every time that they ask you to come and bless a garden, or they come in and bless a gathering, or that they ask you to come and bless us by marching with us, I said, that's your certificate right there. The certificate does not have to come in paper form. The certificate comes when your community comes looking for you.
Yeah. We don't want a textbook curandera over here. So
yeah, that's right. And especially because, externally our practices may look the same. I mean, if you see 3 curanderas all doing a meg limpia, it may look the same, but it's not.
It's not, yeah.
Because there's the internal factor. So so you can't do that. There's the, when one is doing our work, it's also about our connection to the land. It's our connection to our environment. It's our connection to the ancestors, to Creator, I call them the doctor spirits, because the doctor spirits can be, like, I guess, angels, if you want to call them angels, but they can be the bear. They can be, a squirrel. I mean,
Mhm.
depending on the person. So everybody's different. But to me, we're a team. We're working together. And it may look externally the same, but your medicine is still going to be different.
Mhm.
And if I'm sharing my medicine with you or anybody else, it's not about you doing what I do. It's about learning what you do to bring out your gifts, to bring out, to help you strengthen your connection to certain doctor spirits that are for you, that they're the ones who are claiming you. There's certain spirits that claimed me early on. It scared me, but they claimed me, and that'll be also for you, and that's your uniqueness. That's the gift that Creator has placed in your heart to share with people.
I was thinking, all this time that that you're mentioning this idea of validation that comes to our medicine people, comes straight from the peoples, comes straight from the community. And I truly think that is the ancestral way. The fact that there's this whole ideology out there, or people always talk about this whole ideology, mate, that somehow, some way, they achieved all their success, or they achieved all their, all they are, because they're self-made. And that idea is nowhere to be found in our indigenous teachings. And like you're sharing with us, it might look the same, the work that all three healers are doing, but what's truly inside, is the very foundation, or the importance of the work they're sharing. And I really enjoyed the way you said you can learn from me, but what you're truly learning is the gifts that you have inside. And I think that that's such a powerful message for the community, right? To acknowledge the fact that we all carry, in one way or another, gifts that come directly from the ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
and reaching out to the community in whatever, phase that is, whether it's for medicine, whether it's for everyday life. There's something always that we can learn, and something that we carry inside that we can, manifest.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's powerful. I truly appreciate, your words. They truly help me understand things that sometimes I'm not. They just fly right through my head.
Yeah, and I thank you, Cesar, and Vanessa, for sharing your gifts in this way, because this is also needed. Cesar, with you teaching, the language is great, because one of the things that first comes up for all of us when we're reclaiming our identity, when we're reclaiming our culture, our cultural ways, is I want to be able to pray in my language, even if I don't know anything else. How can I pray in my language? There's something that's deep in our DNA that understands that when we go out and we pray with the stone people, we out in the forest or on the desert with the creosote, and we're going to be gathering, you know, those plants. Yeah, they listen to me in English or in Spanish, but I think that there's like an added level when they hear even just one word in a native language. I really enjoy your classes, Cesar, and I hope that I can learn some more, because there is something very meaningful of even just being able to say a greeting,
Mhm.
because the greetings in the indigenous languages are so filled with blessings that are not conveyed in hello. Like here in Kumi Island, hauka, or like if you're in Baja California, we pronounce it auka. It's that it's about blessing your inner fire, your inner sun. It's all conveyed in that word auka. I mean, it's so wonderful. You say auka, it's that blessing. You say your Leos and Chania, that's your blessing. It's so different from just hello. That we start with that blessing. We start our conversation with the blessing. We embark on nurturing our relationships with that blessing. And so I'm glad that you're sharing that and sharing those classes, because that's really important. That's an important piece of reclaiming our true selves, our indigenous self. And I want to thank you also for honoring me by having me here, and by claiming me as your relative. Claiming me as your Yoeme relative is also, to me, it goes deep into my heart, and I want to thank you for that. Chokotusea.
Mala. Thank you so much for your words, and actually we want to thank you for being here with us, and for giving us of your time, your knowledge, your medicine, your gifts, and for sharing also with the audience, because Vanessa and I are always talking how, even though we started this as a project, or we initiated this as a project that dates back as a history of us both, dealing with our own personal lives and trying to heal for survival. Because that's the way I see it. I said, for us, we have to heal in order to survive. Because if we don't heal, how can we keep pushing through if we're not quite there to continue this ancestral path? And we want to thank you, so much for being here with us, for being our relative, for being our mala, our matriarch, for leading the way in the things that you're doing. I also wanted to, if it's okay with you, to ask of you, for people listening in the audience, how can we reach out to you? Because there is a lot of our people that are so, I don't want to say anxious, but that have that feeling inside of them that they want to reach out, to people that possess the gifts that you do, and they just don't know, who to reach out, or like you mentioned, sometimes we reach out to people and they're not the right person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how can we reach you? How can we get in contact?
You can email me at hola@curanderismo.org. You can just go to my website, gracesesma.com, or curanderismo.org. Either one of those take you to my website. Or my phone number is there too, 720-363-6034. You can leave me a message. The best way is really to email me. I spend most of my time right now in Alpine, California, but I'm leaving next week for Colorado, and we're going to be with family over there for the next 3 or 4 months. So, and now with Zoom, because of COVID, it's opened up a very different avenue for meeting with people. So I'm doing that to a certain extent. I offer pláticas through Zoom with those who want to, or just through telephone. For people who are vaccinated, I am beginning to see a limited number of people in person, because I want to be respectful of my husband's health, my health, and the health of my children and my grandchildren. So I still encourage that. But, estoy aquí para servir, and especially if they say, hey, we saw you on Yo FM. We saw the conversation with Cesar and Vanessa, and I would like to speak to you about some of the things that you talked about. That will also help.
Thank you so much, Inmala. It's such a pleasure meeting you today. I hope our paths cross again.
I hope so too. And we can always have a good conversation. It doesn't have to be on Yo FM necessarily, but aquí estoy. If I can be a service to either one of you in any way, just please reach out. We're family. Y para eso estamos, para ayudarnos, para apoyarnos, para bendecirnos, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Muchas gracias, Mala. En serio, muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.